You're listening to Hardscape Growth, a podcast for hungry professionals who want to grow their businesses and level up. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Hardscape Growth Podcast. I'm your host, Alex from Techo Block, and today we're joined by Zach Kitzmiller from Honeystone Design. They do designs nationally, I guess internationally, because you do some for Canadian businesses as well, Canadian contractors, but across the United States is the main focus of the work. And why this episode is special is because Honeystone did the design for one of the projects that will be featured in this winter's Hardscaper Showcase presentations touring across North America. We're going to talk with Zach about the project at hand, a little bit about the discovery process, what questions do they ask to understand exactly what they need to propose to the client, and more importantly, how do you read between the lines of the answers that clients are giving you so you can really knock their socks off, show them something that's different, that stands out from everybody else's designs, adds a ton of value, so you're the obvious choice when it's time for them to make a selection on which business they're going to hire to transform their outdoor living space. Zach, welcome to the show.
Hi, Alex. Thanks for having me on.
Very happy to have you back. You did an episode with us 2 years ago where we were talking about how your business works with different contractors and kind of what that looks like, subcontracting the design aspect of a business out to a design firm, some of the do's and don'ts and stuff like that. So anybody interested in that can check that episode out for sure. But today we're talking about the finer points of that discovery phase, going through that and translating that into the design. And that's so important in today's market. We were kind of running around accepting any, clients would sign with anybody that came and answered the phone or showed up at the door, no matter what the quote was, no matter what the design was. It's like, okay, we're getting it done this year. Great. Let's do it. That's not the same anymore. So now we got to get creative. We got to stand out. We got to be the peacock with the bright colored feathers to get the attention, and design is one of the ways that we do that.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely is. We're seeing a lot of the similar things that you just mentioned. There's an upside and downside, I guess. That there's obviously a little bit less out there, but I think there's still a really great opportunity to work on some awesome projects and work with great clients. There's still a lot of people out in the market that are, very much motivated to have an incredible backyard, an incredible property. And that's really what we're focused on, is helping contractors and homeowners get the most out of their property and really have a special place for their family. That's what we're seeing a lot of as of late.
I have two questions right off the bat. You said people who are motivated to get the most out of their property. Who are those people? What do they look like? What do they sound like? What do they do?
Yeah, so for us, we've seen a lot of the projects we've worked on and that we're working on are homeowners that are more affluent. They're not affected so much by the ups and downs of the market. They're usually building large-scale custom homes. And so we're working with new build projects. They're usually people who they've got a net worth, or they've got real estate or something in the mix where, they can leverage those things to invest in their home and invest in their property. And we're seeing them want to do that because of the market that we're in. Things are uncertain, and we've all heard it all for the last few years, but people want to spend that time in their backyard on their property. And the people that have the means to do so are very much excited and ready to do it, just as we've seen over the last 3 or 4 years. That component of it has not gone away. These people they've got kids. A lot of the clients that we're working with are not retired or older in their years. They've got children, school age children, family time and a special place for the family, and focusing on what the kids are doing, the sports they're playing, wanting their friends to be able to come over and be safe on their own property has been a big trend that we've seen, that a lot of these clients that are still, looking for this kind of work and this kind of, hardscaping and pools and things that we're doing, that's what they're looking for. So, there's less calls, there's less leads, but I think there's just as much opportunity to serve the market just in a slightly different way. And I think the best way to do that, I know we're going to talk more about it in detail, but I think the best way to do it is really to offer a design-driven process to these clients and these homeowners, because that's really what they're looking for. Even if they don't say, "Hey, I'm looking for a sophisticated design," they might not say that, but that's really what they're looking for, and that's what we found.
Is there anything that you're seeing professionally that is a pattern, like that? They tend to have these types of jobs, or that's not really making any difference? It's just if they're at a certain threshold, so there's some level of professional that pulls in X amount of money per year in the household, that's the level, and above that level they're happy and they're willing and they have the funds. Below that line, it's not happening right now. Is that what you're saying?
I think it's hard for me to say really, if there's like, a specific demographic with regard to like what people do or, things like that. But I can say this. I mean, I think a lot of the projects we're working on, I guess what they aren't are middle class Americans who usually would finance a project or take out a HELOC or something like that to do, a patio or deck or something in their backyard. That part of the market, I think we see less of, much less of, because of just economic conditions and things with rates and stuff like that. I think the homeowners that have the means to either self-finance their project or they can leverage certain assets and things. I think what you said, just that certain threshold and up is where it's at. And I would say this too. It's tough because there's a lot of contractors in the country, I'm sure, who they might not get up out of bed every day and think, I'm only going to go out and work for the ultra wealthy. It's kind of defeating sometimes, I think, to think that that's all we can, it's all we can do. I'm not saying that. I think there's now more than ever a lot of people in the country that are upper middle class, or they are wealthy, or they have the means to do these projects. It's not a small pool. There's a lot of people out there. Custom homes have been going up in record rates over the last many years, and they're still going up. It's certainly slowed down, but there's still a lot of new builds. And with all of those new builds over the last several years, and the ones that are continuing to go, these aren't people that are earning, $100,000 a year. These people are earning much more than that. They have the net worth to do things with their property. And there's a lot of them out there. And I think that's really who is driving the market right now for hardscapers and pool builders. And that's what we've been really involved with for the most part over the last year, especially.
I would agree with you. Just based on everything that we've seen in the last 6 months or so, the contractors who are having success are the ones that are tapping into that segment of the market. The ones who are struggling are the ones who are not. Mm-hmm. And it's easier said than done to get into that market. I mean, that's really what we're focusing on with this year's Hardscaper Showcase. That is really the theme, is how do you tap into that? What are the things you need to know? What are the things you need to do? What are the things that the companies that are successful are doing, and how can we implement them in our own businesses in our own way? Because everyone does it a little differently, and that's perfectly fine, and that's normal, and that's the way it should be. Because if everyone did everything the same way, well, we'd all be fighting on price 24/7. So we don't want that.
Exactly. Yeah.
I had a second question, but you kind of answered it already, which was like, I asked who are the people. The second question was, you said they want to get the most out of their property. You kind of already described what that means. Yeah. They want, a lot of them, they are families. Mm-hmm. They do have children. They're school-age children. They want the kids to want to hang around the house. They want the kids' friends to want to hang around the house instead of sending the kids off somewhere else. Right. They want family over. They want friends over. So, bringing people together, having them over at my place, that's an important part. And I think if we transition over to the project that we worked on together for Showcase, that's a good example of it. Now, they don't necessarily have kids, but entertaining was an important part on the shopping list for them. What did that process look like? What are some of the questions that you go through in order to determine what they want, what they don't want. And if you can also shed some light on how you read between the lines, like I was saying at the beginning, a lot is said with what is not actually said.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, just to touch on that specific piece right there, reading between the lines, I think that's really the key to, it's the key to selling. And I hate to use the word selling, but it's the key to selling outdoor living spaces is reading between the lines. I talk to contractors all the time about, the right questions to ask homeowners. In our business, we don't get a lot of direct contact with a homeowner when we do work with contractors. We also work with homeowners, so we see a lot of what's going on, and I myself and my team, we get the chance to interact with homeowners as well. But one of the things that I really try to impress on contractors is, we're not asking the homeowner, what do you want in your backyard? Do you want a patio? Do you want a kitchen? Do you want a pavilion? Because ultimately homeowners don't know what they want. They don't know what the solution is to their problem. They may say, hey, I would like a patio in my backyard and we would like a kitchen in our backyard. But does that kitchen, what does it do? How does it function? Is it covered by a pavilion so that there's shade? I mean, there's so many different elements to it that I like to ask questions that are not, directly related to what do you want in your backyard. What I want to do is I want to conversate with the homeowner and ask questions about who they are, what they like to do, why. And while I'm getting their feedback and they're answering those questions, I'm compiling my own list of things that we're going to design and how we're going to lay it out. I'm answering my own questions in my head about, okay, we definitely need to include this, or we need to design something this way because of what they just said. And so some of those questions are, especially with regard to families. Right now, we're seeing the family drive this entire process. People are spending money on basketball courts. They're spending money on, swimming pools that, for no other reason than my kids want a pool, and that's it. They would never do a pool if their kids didn't want a pool. So the family is really important. So those are my first questions. What is your family like? Do you have kids? What are their ages? What do they do? I mean, we've even gotten into like, what are their schedules? Do they wake up early, go to school, come home? Do they have soccer practice? Like, when they're home at 7 or 8 o'clock at night, what do they want to do? And homeowners are saying, our kids are so busy. They're stressed out. They've got a lot going on. We want them to come home and be able to jump in the pool, or we want their friends to be able to come over and, we cook out and they jump in the pool at the end of the day. And so those questions are telling me all the things I need to know about how to build a space that works for that family without just ticking off a bunch of boxes on what items do we need to include. So that's, go ahead.
No, finish what you were going to say.
Yeah, I was just going to say, that's really the biggest driver for me in the beginning is getting to know the family, learning that the layout of their home, how they come out into the backyard. Do they want to do things inside and outside at the same time, which is also a trend that's very much alive and well right now. But learning their lifestyle, learning their problems, why did they decide to do this project to begin with? Like, what actually made you call me, Mrs. Jones? What was the thing that put you over the edge? Because there's usually a problem. There's usually, well, we had this party and, it didn't go very well, or, there's something that like pushed them to that moment. So I'd say, first and foremost, you got to learn who the family is and what they love and what their problems are before you can really even begin talking about the different features and things that you're going to actually build for them in their backyard.
Before we get into the project, the actual project, I just want to, like you just said, usually there's a moment. Are there like recurring moments that start a project or that start the process?
Yeah, like trends or something that we see a lot of.
Yeah, like is it something about like we know that like big parties are a good initiator, like 4th of July. Why do so many grills get sold at Lowe's and Home Depot in June? It's because 4th of July is coming up and I'm hosting a party and I'm not doing it on this raggedy ass piece of garbage grill. I'm getting a new one.
For sure.
Are there things like that tend to trigger the projects that you're seeing with this type of client?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that we've seen over the long run have been, graduation parties are a huge thing. People are thinking a year or two out about that, and they want to have a really cool space for it. But that concept's been around for a while. I think some of the things that drive it now are, milestones in kids' lives. So, um, you know, you might have, uh, you might have children who are at a certain age where, um, there's an activity coming up or some kind of sporting event or some kind of phase in their lives. They're starting a sport or something like that where they need the basketball court because they got to practice every day, or they need different aspects in the backyard to be able to further their development in life. So I think that's a big one for sure. Another thing too, I think, is just when people build a new home, a lot of the work we do is for custom built homes that have been built recently. You get through that project, and a lot of times the outdoor living is not done right away because it's a huge undertaking to build a custom home. But then a couple of years go by, and they realize, homeowners realize, we're kind of tired of not being able to go in our backyard where the space isn't really functional. We don't even have a space, whatever the case may be. And so that's another big driver is, we've got kids, we've got a family, we want to entertain, but we can't right now, and we need to be able to. And so I think that's really another thing that recently that's really pushing these projects to start. And I think too, the last thing is, and maybe this isn't a specific thing that happens that triggers these projects, but I think a lot of people they want to be able to have a safe haven, they want to be able to entertain, they want to be able to do things in their home, at their home, especially over the last couple of years, and so they're ready to invest into that. And I think for some people, for a lot of people, it's taken a minute maybe to commit to that. It's a huge undertaking. You think about it for a couple of years, and they're finally at the place where, hey, you know what, we really should probably do this. And I think that helps, initiate these projects as well.
This episode is brought to you by Hardscaper.com. The Hardscaper mission is to empower industry professionals with the skills, inspiration, and confidence they need to take their businesses to new heights. Struggling with training programs for your team? Looking for helpful tips to build a better company? Subscribe today to gain access to hours of interactive on-demand hardscape construction and business courses for free. Check out hardscaper.com. Okay, so if we dive into this project,
Yeah.
kind of runs contrary to a lot of the things that you're saying in terms of like they don't have kids, and it's not a custom home. So
yeah. So transitioning into the project that we're doing for Showcase, it really is a unique project. The property is, it's not a new build. It's an older home, very traditional, and it's in the greater Nashville area. And I guess one thing that we're seeing a lot of too is people are buying older homes and transforming them. And it might not be a new custom build, but it's kind of in the same family as that, where you're coming into a property and you're transforming it into what you want it to be. And so when location matters and things like that, that's what we're seeing a lot of homeowners do. I think that's more the case in this project where, we had some homeowners who had a decent property, but it was seriously, in need of some upgrades. They love to entertain. They love to have gatherings. In fact, one of the notes that we had for this project in the beginning was, they wanted to entertain, 50, 60, 70 people, which is quite a few people, especially for a property that's, maybe, I don't know, maybe an acre or two, at the, I don't even think it's that big. It's maybe under an acre, so.
But not once in a while.
Yeah, not once in a while, like, pretty often, right? So
like almost weekly is what they want.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's important detail when designing an outdoor space.
Yeah, it's a very important detail. In fact, it's a big driver of the project. So, as we built this design and layout, we took that into consideration. How are we going to entertain that many people? And there's certain situations where you can accommodate that many people, and there's others, parts of the design where, obviously 50 people are not going to get into the hot tub at the same time. So it's one of those things where, much of it works for a large amount of people, but how do you implement multiple facets of a design so that you can have 50 people in the backyard, but doing different things, but not feeling disconnected? And that's really one of the big challenges that we face sometimes with these designs, and that we aim to solve. The problem that we aim to solve. So
I think another important part there, though, is like they entertain a ton of people regularly, but
yeah,
that's one night a week. So every other day of the week, it's just for two people. So finding that balance as well, I thought of that because you said the hot tub, and that's a perfect example. Like you're not going to put 50 people in the hot tub, but you still need the hot tub because they still live there and they want a hot tub. So how do you find that balance of the use of space so it's conducive to everyday living, and when you got to flip a switch and go into party mode, you can.
Right, exactly. And that's really the key. You nailed it. So with this project here, the thing that we try to use as anchors in these spaces to achieve exactly that, which is, how does this space entertain a lot of people, but also feel connected and work for just a few people, for those days. So the things that we try to use as anchors in these designs are, obviously swimming pools, just due to the space that they take up. And another thing is, outdoor kitchens and structures that usually accompany them. So, just like people say in the inside of a home, the kitchen's kind of the heart of the home. We're finding the same thing is true outside. The kitchen is nothing new to outdoor living, but the way that we're doing kitchens in the last 6 months or year is definitely different than, how we've done them over the last, decade or two. So
let's talk about that.
Yeah, these kitchens they're bigger. They're not just a grill and a fridge. They are, flat tops and smokers and ice chests and wine coolers and pizza ovens. And, we see homeowners, and this is really across the board with all the things in the backyard, but especially kitchens. People aren't, they're not simple-minded when it comes to, building their custom backyard. They know about these features and they expect them and they want them. I know there was a time in my career where, you didn't dare propose something extravagant because, people just wouldn't do it, and I think that's changed a lot. You mentioned earlier, contractors who are succeeding versus ones who are struggling. I think you have to come to grips with the fact that people can tell you no if they want, but chances are a lot of people are not going to tell you no when it comes to these features. They've seen them on Instagram. They've seen their neighbors and friends do it. They want to do it. They want the smoker, even if they never use it. For some reason, they still want it, So at the end of the day, we're offering these features, and especially in kitchens, and we're using that kitchen space to anchor the outdoor living area because, when you're doing an outdoor living project for people who like to entertain, you want people to be able to sit at the bar. You want them to be able to have a good view of the rest of the yard. There's obviously cooking going on at the same time. You want to be able to have access to drinks and things. So even though you have other areas in the backyard, the heart of it really comes down to the kitchen. And this project's a little different. We didn't put the kitchen underneath the structure here, but we're finding that a lot of projects that we do, we are incorporating the kitchen under a pavilion or a pool house or some structure. But in this space here, and just tying back into the challenge that we have with this property, with its size and with wanting to entertain so many people, I don't know, I'm showing a rendering here just in case you're watching this, but
and for those who are watching, this is one of the versions of the designs. This isn't the final one, so if you want to see the full one, you'll have to come to Showcase. But this is the this is one of the initial designs that we brought some tweaks to for reasons we'll discuss at the show. But walk us through what some of those things that you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can see in this space, or I kind of walk you through it. We have a home where the door is, it's up off the ground a few feet, and that's really common with a lot of homes. So we have to create a space that gets you from 0 to minus 36, for example, right, in inches in the backyard. And so we created this deck, and We leveraged, the roof over that deck so that you could have a space going back to, when there's not 50 people in the backyard. It's a great space to just have dinner, relax with a few people. We've got the spa incorporated up there so that, during the off months, you've got, a quick access to the spa without running way out into the middle of the backyard. And then, segueing from the deck, we've got this elevated kitchen area. Again, this is really where, this space is kind of the heart of the backyard. In this particular design, we've also got the structure with a fireplace and some seating area as well. And if you look at the deck and the kitchen and the structure, it kind of makes a triangle, or they all three triangulate on each other, so that you can go from 2 or 3 people on the deck to maybe 10 or 15, incorporating the kitchen and the structure, and we're still only using maybe 40% of the
fraction
backyard.
of the yard.
Yeah, exactly.
So coming out the door, you have an elevation change to address. Like you said, you got to go from 0 to 0 minus 36. So there's going to be a set of steps. But what you've done is you've taken advantage of one covered portion of the home and said, okay, well, we can put a little dining area here. That's convenient because it's close to the house. It's covered. So even if the weather's not great, well, we're not getting rained on or anything. There's a privacy component there. So I'm sitting there with my guests or my family or whatever, and neighbors can't see us. That structure is also a rigid structure, so it's blocking noise from the neighbor's house and stuff like that, which is, these are all little details that, that make a difference and add value. They add cost, but they also add value. Then you come down a couple steps to reach the kitchen. The kitchen is elevated. Why the decision to make it elevated?
Yeah, so there's a couple reasons. Number one, something that we always take into account with the kitchen is we want the person who is doing the cooking to not feel left out or excluded from the party or the gathering. And so having a great view from there is important if we can achieve it. So in this case, how we had the kitchen designed, it allowed us to take advantage of the limited space that we had by kind of incorporating it along the border of the space. But it also provides a great view for the people who are cooking and preparing food for guests, and to still feel like they're part of the party.
They're not just off on the side grilling, forgotten. They're still
exactly.
They're pretty much the star of the show. You have them almost on a pedestal.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the other thing too, Alex, is we really want to try to create dimension in our designs. People are looking for sophisticated designs. Again, they may not say, "Hey, Alex, I'm looking for sophisticated
design."
Right?
Yeah.
That's a read between the lines kind of thing, right? But they are looking for sophisticated spaces, sensory spaces. That's kind of a new term we hear a lot, but having the kitchen elevated like it is, and having the deck and kind of having like a multi-tiered system is a great way to add dimension to the space, to make it feel, it just creates a better vibe, I think. And there's different sight lines, and like I said, the spaces are kind of triangulating on each other, so that everything kind of works together, and nobody feels left out, regardless of how many people or how few people you have in this space.
So sophisticated, just another word for out of the ordinary?
Yeah, I think out of the ordinary. I think, like you mentioned earlier, from the privacy walls and the thinking about sound and thinking about neighbors and privacy and really how you use the space. Homeowners, that's what they're looking for. And they may call a contractor to say, "Hey, I need you to build me a backyard or a patio," but that's what they're asking for is, I need you to think through the details that I haven't thought through. We have this saying, we don't want you to get done with this project and not love your backyard, and that's it's so easy for that to happen. There's homeowners in America every day that, do a project in their backyard, and then they find out, it maybe just wasn't what they really wanted. And what was that? Like, why is it not what they really wanted? Well, because chances are that homeowner and that contractor, it was a means to an end. We didn't talk about the details. We didn't really learn about the family and what they like to do and how they like to do it. And so we miss a lot of that. So I know for this project here, lighting was a huge component. I know we could talk more about that, but lighting and privacy and sophisticated details, this pergola or this pavilion structure, these clients they wanted something high end. Again, they bought this property. It wasn't very sophisticated. They wanted to add a lot of pizzazz to it and feel really good about their space. And so those little details are so important, not just doing a traditional pavilion that looks, like every other pavilion, doing the accents, vertical accents that are custom made, using different materials. It's not just block and pavers and mulch and plants anymore. We're working with wood, we're working with metal, we're working with really cool lighting features. It's not just path lights and up lights anymore, right? So I think transitioning from these basic materials and basic design elements that have worked for 50 years and listening to the homeowner and saying, look, like, we know you want these details, we know how to design it, we know how to make something special for you, and implementing those into the design. That's what we're focused on, at least. I can say that.
Is it the variety of materials? Does that contribute to that feeling of more of a sophisticated design? Because
yes,
you have different textures, you have different colors, you have different. The light reacts with things differently.
Correct.
So all these things create more of a variety, and it feels. I don't know if it feels deeper is the word, but like I guess that kind of contributes to that other word that you said, like a sensory space. Seeing like the way the light will shine off metal versus, let's say a clean block countertop versus like a dry cast concrete versus a composite deck versus the plants and the flowers and the water, the pool. Like it's just, there's so much to look at. It's stimulating. And once you get those trees matured and you get the dancing shadows of the leaves, like all of a sudden, like this thing is just, it's a piece of art to look at. So you can enjoy it sitting anywhere.
Yeah. And you just, take what you just said and imagine explaining that to a homeowner. When you're on that initial consult or you're in a,
that's the game. That's the real game.
The game. Yeah, absolutely.
So what are some of those? Like I just said a couple of these things.
Yeah, but, let's. Absolutely. So
walk me through some of those details and how they were presented to the client that got them excited.
Yeah, for sure. So the some examples that we're using a lot are, and so I guess to back up just a little bit.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right 100%. It's sensory. Again, people want a safe haven. They want that Instagram-worthy backyard, right? We all see it, right, on Instagram and the Airbnbs and stuff. That's what people want in their backyard. And so when we try to design, with that in mind, we're looking at different materials. And I think one of the trends that are going on recently are the mixed use of materials to create a more sensory space or a more sophisticated space. And I think it's a blend. I call it contemporary design style. I know we use the word modern a lot, but I think it's more contemporary because
it's today.
Yeah, it's today. Right. Yeah. It's today. And what's in today is the mixed use of these materials. You might have some natural elements. You might have some more modern elements that you're mixing together. And so like examples of that are, we love to use, our traditional materials like, concrete pavers, composite decking, things like that. Those have been around for a while. We're going to keep using those. But adding in accent walls, verticals that are made from metal, that are made from aluminum, and like you said, lighting them, positioning them, building privacy walls, introducing light fixtures. Like on this rendering here, we've got some sconce lights and different things that you don't typically see that are very unique that add a different element to the space. And that's what we're trying to achieve, is to add these little details in so that it creates a vibe. It's hard to explain, but so that it creates a vibe, so that it creates that
vibe or an environment or an atmosphere. Pick the word that's appropriate for the client that you're talking to. But do you need to get into some of those details, like I was saying before, like that privacy component, why you put it there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that an important part of the process with the client?
It is. It is a very important process. And that's, again, reading between the lines, listening to the clients and what they're asking for, what they're telling you about their lifestyle. These clients here, they love their privacy. They love being intimate, in a normal way, in their backyard, family time. They want to be able to drink wine. They love Italy. They have certain things that they like that we want to try to capture in the space. And so for this property, again, this is a this is not a custom 3-acre lot, custom home. This is an older home on a pretty narrow lot. So privacy was a big concern. Noise is obviously a concern, not just from the neighbors, but from this homeowner, right? They're going to have a lot of people over. So, having privacy trees and verticals that help break that sound. And also, you don't want to be reminded that you're maybe in a city lot or in a dense, urban area. So that's really important. It was really important to these homeowners, and it's important to a lot of homeowners who are in this similar situation. And I love that we have so many options. There's a lot of different manufacturers and products, companies that provide different products that are made from different materials that we get to use in these designs. And I think we're just at as far as a trend goes, I think that's a very early trend as far as using these different, metal products, hideaway screens, composite materials. It seems like every day I see a new product or something that's out on social media that I'm like, man, we could really use that in a design. And we're really trying to leverage that as much as we can to help give homeowners the type of space they're looking for, especially, homeowners like these for this project here.
The use of the different materials, we've covered that quite a bit.
Yeah.
The changing of elevations, we've covered that. Let's go through like some other areas in this space, because we have like a dining area, we have a cooking area, we have basically a living room, which is under the shade structure, which is awesome because you have a fireplace. You've placed a TV above the fireplace. There's some design details in here, like the pavement banding. We've made some changes to this, as I mentioned earlier, but the pavement banding that starts at the fireplace and cuts all the way through. This property is a little unique in the sense that the driveway runs adjacent to the or parallel to, well, I guess both adjacent and parallel to the backyard, the entire length, because the garage is in the back. So it's a long, narrow lot, and both run parallel, so they'll be separated by a fence once this project is complete. But there's still some design details where the pavement continues on both sides, and I think those are the types of things that, like, when you present that thought, and I think what you said is really the key, is they're looking to hire someone who's going to think of all the details that they can't even think about. These are not things that occur to them, but when you present it to them, like, listen, your property is rather unique in the form that driveway comes along the side. So one of the things that we decided to do is use the same pavement across on both sides, so that there is a continuity in the materials used, in the aesthetic, in the overall theme of your property. So your home is not just the backyard and inside the house. It's the driveway, it's the garage, it's the front, it's the whole package. That's what we're trying to do for you, you and your husband here. And I think that's part of the way that you can bring value and communicate that value. If we continue, there's also pillars that you put around the posts. Now that's nothing new either. This is decades that we've been doing this. But the decision to include pillars on this project, was there some specific reason?
Yeah, I think for this project, what we wanted to do was create that vertical dimension. And it's funny you mentioned it. We actually weren't sure about the pillars for a while. We went back and forth, the contractor and I, on do we keep them pillars or not. One of the things that we talked about, but by potentially not having them there, was because of the flow and the way that the space worked. And you'll see later on when you see the final result, we did end up keeping the pillars. Because they do add a lot of dimension and sophistication to that structure, and we figured out a way to make it work with the layout and the flow otherwise. But yeah, I think not only does it add vertical dimension, but it also helps sophisticate. I know I've said that word a million times, but the space with the paver design, and that also got updated a little bit. I think it's much better now than what you're seeing here, but the same theme is still there and still applies, and that's. Paver design obviously has come a long way in the last several years. I know a lot of contractors are mixing different types of pavers and to create a really cool design style. I think that's also an emerging trend, not mixing pavers, but like really getting creative with pavers and with the design, because it's easy to mix a lot of pavers. Is that timeless? Is it going to look great 10 years from now? I don't know, but I think there are ways to create subtle paver designs that do add a lot of interest into the space that are timeless. And that's that's a challenging thing that we really try to work hard on to create a paver layout, and also with walls too, like with these pillars, to create a layout where it's timeless. It's going to look good for a long time, but we didn't just put down a bunch of the same paver and call it a day.
Right.
We use it to tie in all the spaces, pools and structures.
Yeah, you have
anchor.
a couple. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah,
So,
I want to come back to the anchor thing in a second, but I think like vertically, this project is using the Raffinato wall. It's the gray nickel with onyx black, and you have onyx black mixed in a little bit everywhere. Sometimes it's a stripe, sometimes it's a big piece, but it's the common thread. That that accent, it's the same type of accent that's used everywhere. The other thing that you mentioned was you said this a few minutes ago, was years ago we wouldn't dare propose something extravagant. I think that's the big shift in the paver patterns. You're saying like pavement design has come a long way. The products have been there. It's people haven't had the guts to propose these things to the clients because they're not going to go for that. But at the end of the day, what does the client want? The client wants something that's unique to them, and that's never been more true than the last few years and continuing into the future. So you said contemporary design. That is 100% part of contemporary design, not just mixing and matching of different material types, but even within those materials, getting creative and bringing the art out of those materials and really creating something that's unique that basically becomes an art piece. And what better way to celebrate the creation of that outdoor living space than to make it also an art piece to appreciate visually? I think that's where you get and if you're talking that way, I think that's where sophistication becomes relevant. I think that's where the sensory experience becomes relevant as well. It's like going to a museum in your own backyard. Maybe not to that extent, but maybe yes to that extent. All depending on what they're looking for and what you can present to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would add to that too. I think where I've seen some of us in the industry struggle, I know I did, is, you're seeing all this stuff on Instagram, you're seeing the mixing of pavers and stuff like that, and you go to try to do it yourself, and maybe you find out it's a little more difficult than what it looks to be, right? Because ultimately, it is art, like you said. It is there is much, it's much of a science as it is art, right? There's math to it too, right? I mean, you've got different paver heights, you've got different, clean block versus non-clean block. I mean,
different technologies to take into account, how the products will behave in the environment.
Yeah. In fact, I'll give you a great example in this rendering here. If you're watching, we've got this Borealis slab going across the driveway, which is like, you can't do that, right?
First you could if you wet laid it, but that wasn't
could, right?
Yeah.
Or like if we use the actual wall pieces or something. But I just want to speak to it because it gives a great example of, you let your creativity run, but you really got to think about what you're doing and make sure that it's possible, it's probable, and also it's got the art piece that's timeless. And I think that's where the challenge comes in. But that's 100% what we need to be doing. We need to be thinking about these spaces in that context of, how do we anchor our kitchens and our pools and our different spaces using our paver design, using our patio design. Driveways are another huge thing. I mean, we are doing more driveways now than ever before as part of a greater project. People are starting, at least I know in Canada everybody does it, but in the U.S. it's starting to become a little more popular, I think. And so like tying all those spaces together in a functional and creative way, it's challenging, but it's definitely worth it. It's something that I think as a contractor, as a designer, if you want to get to the next level, that's something to seriously consider, is how to do that well. And there are definitely people in the industry who are doing it well, and, get with them and, figure it out, learn the products, learn the materials. That was one thing I wrote down, Alex, earlier about, trends and things is, you got to know your materials. And I say this to myself as much as I say it to anybody else. There are so many materials that we can use. It's not limited, in any fashion. Sometimes it's easy to say to a homeowner, oh, we don't do concrete, or oh, we don't do composite decking, or oh, we don't do this, no, we don't do that. I'm all for having a niche, but at the same time, that's kind of going away. People want multiple materials, not for the sake of having multiple materials, but they want a vibe. They want a space to be a certain way. They want it to be artistic. They want it to be unique. You just can't achieve that without knowing materials like the back of your hand, how they work, how you can implement them, how you can design them.
And designing within the parameters or the characteristics of those products is important too.
Yeah.
For example, like the pillars on the design, they were a specific size, but when we actually built them, we modified that size to accommodate the size of the posts for the shade structure that were going down the center of them, B, to eliminate cuts on the project. So we decided to go with 3 full units instead of 2.5 as was originally designed. And the third thing was also the alignment, which is something we're going to talk a lot about at Showcase, but like, the pool never ends up going in perfectly square to the house, and the shade structure doesn't go in perfectly square to those 2 other things either. So there's a delicate balance in the execution of a design to bring the vision to fruition, where you have to make some compromises. And I think that's a part that comes with experience as well. You get a design, well, the plan says this. Yeah, but in real life, we might have to move this over 6 inches. And that's okay because we can adjust over there and no one will know the difference. Right. And I think I'm not saying that to be sneaky. I'm saying like that's just the difference between like a good design and a good build.
Absolutely. And the two have to work together, like you said. I know, with the contractor in this project, we went back and forth over those dimensions, like you said. Yeah. A dozen times, and yes, you're always going to adjust things in the field. There's just no ways of, there's just no other way about it. But one thing that we try to get better at, and we obviously have room for improvement, is to foresee as much of that as we can in the design process and get it as close, like you said, fewer cuts and, designing things the way that they are actually going to be built. I think that is what sets apart a great designer. But it's really that collaboration between the designer and the builder. I've got a great relationship with this contractor, and we work together hand in hand, both conceptually, but then also, in construction too, to make sure that they, we try to make sure that this contractor has everything they need to be able to build the project as smoothly as possible. And, sometimes it's easier said than done. Sometimes it goes really well. Sometimes we're pulling our hair out. It's just part of the business. But yeah.
Well, Zach, I think we can wrap it up on this. We don't even need to get through the rest of the project because we've hit so many points. If people want to get in touch with you, if they're interested in either getting an opinion on something regarding design, or if they're interested in hiring your company services to elevate their design offering to their clients, to tap into that next level of opportunity in the market, what is the best way, or what are the best ways for them to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to help out any way we can. Honeystone.design is our website. It's packed full of information about what we do and how we do it. So definitely check that out. I'm all over social media as well, so you can connect with me on there. Love to help anybody out that's looking for some help on the design side. And I'm really excited to see this project, come to life fully and see it at Showcase next year. And it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's we did a couple cool things that we haven't done before, and I think being able to take some of these design things, I think anybody listening here, when you come to the show, it's going to be that much more interesting to see, because this is really just one version of the design. We went through a lot of different iterations. Zach, I want to thank you for taking the time to hang out with us this week. I know you're a busy guy, so I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
If anybody has those questions, they can reach out to you. And in the coming weeks, for those of you who are listening, we're going to be doing an episode with Matt Daly from Water and Earth, who designed the other project that we'll be featuring at this year's showcase. And we're going to have interviews with the different contractors as well, to get their perspective, a little behind the scenes stuff as we continue leading up to show season for 2024. I know it seems far away here. We're just in August, but it's right around the corner. And if we're not thinking about how we're going to build a better business for 2024 now, it's going to be too late when we start thinking about it in February and March of next year. So, Zach, once again, thank you very much. And until next time, everybody, work hard, pave harder, and we'll see you next week on the Hardscape Growth Show. You've been listening to Hardscape Growth, a podcast for hungry professionals who want to grow their businesses and level up. Each episode is all about taking the next step in running your business, so make sure you never miss a show by subscribing on your favorite podcast player. And if you're finding this information to be useful, help others in your position discover us by giving us a star rating and leaving a comment. We'll see you next week.